Just roll it. You know what I'm talking about. Let's get into it. Hello everyone, my name is Ryan. Welcome to or welcome back to my channel, and here today we're going to be talking about the greatest movie of all time, The Kissing Booth. Woo! So, I was kind of thinking about this movie recently because I was thinking about Harvard because I saw Legally Blonde on Netflix because they finally added it on and I was rewatching it. I was thinking about Harvard because in the sequel, in The Kissing Booth, for some reason Noah goes to Harvard. Not really explained, and Nell also gets into Harvard. Not really explained. And so I was thinking about this movie and I was thinking, wait, could you see this movie in a satirical lens? And so I watched the movie in a satirical lens and I came up with this thing. This movie is a dark satire, in a sense. And I know I'm sounding really happy about this, but it was very interesting kind of looking at it like a different lens. Because obviously, you know, this movie is presented as like a teen comedy, teen rom-com, I guess. But I was thinking about this movie and I kind of thought of a thesis of kind of how you could see it in a dark satirical lens. So here's my thesis about it, and then I'm going to prove it to you of why this thesis is a true thesis. So my thesis is, I wrote down, a darkly satirical film about a girl who is so desperate for love, she'll go great lengths to feel socially accepted and get a boyfriend who actually loves her. So let me break it down. The first part, a girl who is so desperate for love. Obviously, that's referencing Elle. She's super desperate for love. We can see that in her opening monologue. She's like, oh, I want a boyfriend. Oh, I want a first kiss. Why hasn't that happened to me? Stuff like that. With a lot of other irrelevant stuff thrown in, so you kind of only remember like the last thing she says, which is about the kiss and getting a boyfriend. The second part, feeling socially accepted. So that one's kind of harder to kind of explain, but I think that's kind of important to explain because I think it's quite important to kind of talk about in the context of this movie. And third part, get a boyfriend who actually loves her. Obviously, that's referencing Noah, who's her boyfriend, you know, Mr. Hot Football Jock Dude, whatever, you know. So the phrase that actually loves her, I think, is an important phrase because I think just watching this movie, Lee and Elle have a very similar relationship that Elle, I guess, has with Noah. They're both very bad people, and it's just kind of more obvious with Noah. I think it's very interesting that there are a lot of things that happen in it that kind of show that Elle has the same, or similar, I guess, relationship that she does with Lee and with Noah. So that's maybe like why she's like cool with dating Noah, but let me get into it. Let me get into my evidence. So part one, a girl who is desperate for love. So Elle, I think she's like 17 or something. I'm assuming she's a junior. And junior year is very important for grades. We never see her do any homework or take any tests or anything. Obviously that doesn't mean she's dumb. It doesn't explain why she got into Harvard, because I know for Harvard you probably have to, I don't even know, take a lot of APs, you know, do a lot of extracurriculars, show that you're really active in the community and stuff like that. And Elle doesn't really do any of that. But, you know, also, you know, if you watched Operation Varsity Blues on Netflix recently, you might know another reason why she got into Harvard. But back to Elle though. So I think it's very interesting in the opening monologue. The few things that you should or could remember, possibly, is that she is desperate for her first kiss and having her first boyfriend. She hasn't had that and she's wondering why. Because a lot of other things in the movie are very irrelevant to the story. Like, she talks about Christmas presents and Christmases and Halloweens and birthdays and their corresponding birthday presents. And these three things, though, don't really, like, I guess, connect with the audience because it's irrelevant to the story. It doesn't really build up of like what this character is and who she is as a person, and it's just very airy backstory. And I'd even go as far as to say her mother even dying is kind of just extra stuff that happens to her that doesn't really build her character, because obviously losing a parent, you know, can be really horrible, can be traumatic, but it doesn't seem like it really has changed Elle as a character or really anything, because, you know, she doesn't really seem to stop doing things or motivated to do other things, or we're not even said anything about that. So it's just like her mother dying is like to give her death, if that makes sense. So the only thing that we do remember is that she's wondering when's her first kiss, when's her first boyfriend, whatever, right? Which, do remember that. I will be talking about that in like a few seconds, because I think there's another interesting point with that. But let's like jump right into the story. So after our monologue, it's the opening. And so one of the things that's very interesting, it seems like she might want boys' attention, because Noah's like, oh, Elle, you got boobs over summer. And then Lee's like, yeah, she was on human growth hormones. And then Elle's like, Lee, rule number 2, don't share your friend's secrets. And so it's like, wait, is she literally on hormones? Don't really know, because it's not really kind of circled back to, so it's not exactly a point. I just wanted to throw it out there because I thought it was a very interesting thing. But like, moving into the actual story, so after that whole scene, it's just she's getting ready for school, pants rip, she wears a really short skirt, whatever, she's going to school. And then, so she gets sexually harassed by this guy named Tuppen, who, you know, just comes up behind her, sexually harasses her, and then gets beat up by Noah. Wonderful. So she's in detention with him. You know, she's obvious, or it seems like she was mad that she got sexually harassed. I don't really know. But, so he sends her a note, and by a note, I mean he literally takes binder paper. He doesn't even, like, rip off the fringe, because, like, the least you could do, bro. But he doesn't rip off the fringe. He takes out a Sharpie, I'm assuming, and he writes, I'm sorry, gives it to Elle. Or gives it to a guy to give it to Elle. And she forgives him. And she says it's a nice apology in a later scene when she's talking to Lee about it. Nice apology? Like, he literally just wrote, I'm sorry, on Sharpie. Not really a nice apology. So that has to be either, like, something about how her standards, like, a satirical thing about how her standards are so low for men that she'll kind of just date whatever guy is interested in her, whether if it's good for her or not, who knows? Because then he asks her for a number, and then she's like, yes, I'll give you my number, and she goes on a date with him, and it's like, he sexually harasses her. Why would you go on a date with a guy who sexually harasses you? Just, we need that explained. You know, we need that explained. But, so there. So she's obviously desperate, you know, she goes on the date. It doesn't work. But she learns that Noah's controlling. Because Tuppen says that. So she calls him, she's like, stop controlling me, whatever. He's like, no, I'm gonna keep controlling you, lol. And the thing is, the interesting thing about that is, so he keeps being controlling, wonderful, love that. But she says, or a paraphrase, I couldn't help but wonder why Noah did that. Like, in a sweet tone as well. It's like a voiceover or whatever. So she obviously, I don't know, she likes the fact that he's protecting her. I don't, like, what? Someone needs to explain that to me, because if some person was protecting me by controlling who and who I couldn't date, bad. So, you know, she finds that cute or something. I don't know. You know, she continues to develop a crush on him even more. It seems like her desperation and infatuation with Noah is kind of blinding the reality that is around her about how Noah is a toxic person. Because personally, even I believe, when she gives the whole monologue about how her, Lee, and Noah grew up, I already started hating Noah. Like, Noah was mean to Lee. But, so anyways, Elle starts to date Noah. And so the first thing that we really see is them in the gazebo, and he gives us this whole talk about how she's the only girl that doesn't fall at his feet, which, okay, I'm not sure, maybe I'm just being gross or something, but fall at his feet, is that like sexual subtext? That's disgusting. That's like disgusting to say to someone who you're like trying to convince to date you. to just be like, ah, yes, you're the only person who doesn't drop to their knees. But his whole speech, again, similar to Ella's opening monologue, it's just kind of airy. And so, like, the whole speech is just airy, and it's just a lot of stuff that he's saying is just kind of, in a sense, stupid. It's just, oh, you're the only girl who doesn't follow his feet. And if there is sexual subtext in there, no. It just kind of sounds like you're the one for me, but in a very manipulative tone. Especially because it kind of sounds like you're the only girl who doesn't follow my feet. I want to chase you. That drives me crazy. That sounds bad in and of itself. And also, Elle's just kind of taken that, and she's like, yes, I'm the only girl, let's date. And she's not even looking at the reality of the situation, because there's even a part later where she comes up with, like, this pros and cons list, like, after that. And I think that's, like, a great kind of thing to look at, because, like, the two pros are he smells yummy, gross, and then he's a good kisser. Like, in a sense, yes, but also no, because she's only kissed him, so she doesn't know what a bad kiss is like, you know what I mean? You know what I mean. But, like, the cons are, like, I don't think she added on there, but, like, he's aggressive. She said he was a player. She writes down that they always fight, which is, I think, a very important thing, because if you're dating someone, you should not be, constantly fighting with them, because that is bad. Another thing that she even writes down is that he's controlling, which I think should be a giant red flag for her. But again, she is blinded by her desperation and infatuation. And I think a very interesting thing as well is later, so he takes her to, like, the Hollywood signing. Is like, this is my special spot. So let me just drop a little bit of psychology AP on all y'all. So one of the things that you have to do to have a good relationship is have intimacy. And intimacy is having a close bond with someone. And you have to reveal things about yourself. And that's through self-disclosure, the act of revealing things about yourself. And so he takes her to the special spot. And he's like, this is special to me. So obviously, sounds like he's opening up. But here's the thing. We don't know what he, thinks about here, why it's special to him, what caused him to go here. There's nothing, really special about this spot, except for the fact that she is the first girl who has come here, and we don't know why. He's not opening up to Elle. It feels more like Elle is just kind of building this relationship inside her head and kind of projecting it outward onto Noah. Because it just seems like all these things that are happening seem like, in a distorted reality, they could be a good relationship, obviously, but these characters don't seem to know each other. Because we don't even seem to know these characters either, So it seems all in all that Elle is just making this relationship inside her head because she so badly wants a real relationship that she'll just kind of take anything she wants, kind of build it in her head and not in reality. Part 2, to be socially accepted. So this is kind of a small part, but as I talked about before, I think it's kind of important to talk about. So we know Elle, she isn't really a socialite of the movie, which is fine. You don't have to be a socialite. But the thing is, it seems like she has a lot of contradictory behavior that makes her seem like she wants to be accepted by popular people, more or less. We see in the opening, for the first time we're seeing her walk to school, she's not really talking to anyone, which, obviously shows that she isn't really kind of in the in crowd, But there are things that happen throughout this movie that just contradict her pre-established kind of character traits, I guess. So one of them is parties. So she goes to a few parties, like the Flynn's house party, and she goes to a beach party. So one of the things I noticed right off the bat is, so she doesn't like alcohol. She's like, oh no, I don't drink. When the OMG girls offer her a drink, and then she takes it, and then also at the beach, she does flip cup, which, I'm assuming she's gonna drink alcohol, unless she's playing flip cup with soda, but usually you play flip cup with alcohol, right? Because she's this pre-established, set up good girl, so it just doesn't make any sense, and it kind of leads back to part 1 about how she's like desperate for love and attention. This kind of intertwines itself. She's desperate for that social acceptance as well, so she'll do contrary things to her pre-established behavior. And then the last thing for this one, so she and Noah have sex at school. Why? Like, okay, is it because kind of similar for the desperate for attention and being socially accepted, which I'm not sure, maybe I should have thrown in the first part. So as I keep saying, she's been set up as this good girl character. So why is she having sex at school? Or like, that's why I'm assuming, you know, it could be her making out with Noah, but still, why would she do that? But it seems like she's only doing it so that Noah doesn't break up with her, you know? And possibly even maybe as well to be like part of the cool kids who are having sex at school. Maybe, I don't know. Doesn't obviously happen to any other character. But I just find it interesting that she does that because again, it's breaking her pre-established character trait. So the movie needs to explain that, but I know they won't because we're moving to the third movie. Probably won't know that much about these characters or any more than we actually do. So part 3. Toxic friend, toxic boyfriend. Talking about Lee, talking about Noah, how their relationships to Ella are very similar to each other. So let's first talk about Noah. Okay, obviously if you watch the movie, he's toxic, and that's just facts. And if you disagree with me, here are some examples, because, you know, I'm still gonna prove it. He's controlling about, like, literally he's telling guys to not ask her out on a date. That sounds pretty controlling to me. Referencing back to part 1 where I talked about how she talks in the monologue, where she hasn't talked to a guy, or had her first kiss, or had her first boyfriend yet. Is this because Noah has been doing this previously to the beginning of the movie? Like, if that is so, that's extremely horrible behavior. So he's also narcissistic and egomaniacal as well, and I think one of the like good examples of that is, so the night of the fair, Elle, you know, she's like, I need you to work the kissing booth because you're hot and people want to kiss you, and he's like, no. And then he launches into this whole speech about Elle Evans doesn't need anyone's help before, but now you're begging on your knees. Like, begging, she's literally asking you. I don't know where you got begging from, because when she was like, no, I'm good by myself, that was when he was trying to control her. So now he's like, oh, you're begging. She's asking. Big difference. He also wants to keep his relationship with Elle a secret, and that's a big, like, red flag. He's like, oh yeah, I gotta keep my reputation up. And what is his reputation exactly? It sounds like he wants to keep it a secret, either to cheat behind Elle's back or something like that. I don't even know. Obviously, he doesn't cheat throughout the movie, but I'm just saying. I'm just saying. Also, he's physically aggressive. We all know the car scene where he's like, get in the car out, get in the car out, get in the car out. And I don't even know what to say. That's just downright horrifyingly scary. So yeah, I don't even know. And then he like pulls, that's how I'm wired, which that argument personally I think is kind of dumb. And that also feeds into his manipulation, because it sounds like I won't change for you, but you will change for me. Because he's like, oh, I've been to a couple therapists and they haven't worked. Here's the thing though, I feel like he shouldn't, as a character, give up on therapy. Or therapists, I guess. But also, therapy isn't for everyone. And also, no one's just wired. Like, whatever, fill in the blank. Because it's about practicing or discontinuing a habit. So if it's aggression, he's gotta practice discontinuing the habit. Either just like whenever he feels angry, he kind of does something to kind of make himself stop and kind of recognize and acknowledge his anger, or something like that. And I don't know why I'm giving him character death, because he doesn't deserve it. He doesn't deserve it. Also, I have to say, he's also kind of a stalker, because so the whole scene where Elle's doing her little run thing after the fair, and then he comes up on his motorcycle behind her and he's like, yo, let me give you a ride home. Okay. how did he come up behind her from a motorcycle? Because it seems like she stayed later than everyone else. And also motorcycles are fast, so let's say they leave at the same time. He's gonna zoom out there, like literally. I don't know, it feels like he kind of just waited, kind of a little stalkerish, if you ask me. And he seems to get away with all this stuff because he is literally a tall, white, attractive jock character. Yes, the actor who plays him, Jacob Elordi, is attractive. That's literally a fact. And I think this whole thing about how he gets away with all these horrible things is a whole satire in itself of how attractive white men get away with a lot of stuff. But we're not going to talk about that right now. We're going to talk about Lee and how he's very similar with his relationship with Elle that Noah is with Elle. So it seems like there's a lot of toxic traits shared between Lee and Noah, so maybe there's something going on in the Flynn household that's just giving these kids horrible character traits. So number 1, Lee is controlling of Elle. That's just facts. Literally, if you look to the friendship rules, okay, literally some of them are just one-way streets. Like the whole rule, the one that says that Elle can't date Noah, that one, that's a one-way street because Elle's little brother is 8, so that's literally only a one-way street with Elle not being able to date Noah. And that's just it. So that's like a one-way street thing. Also, the huge fight at the end, and Lee's like, the one thing I had that Noah didn't was you. Lee doesn't have ownership over Elle's friendship, pretty much. Like, he has a privilege. Okay, maybe not privilege, 'cause she's also a horrible person, but you know, he has the privilege, I guess, of being her friend, not the ability to own her friendship. Also, why don't Lee nor Elle have any other friends? Like, especially Elle. Because you see in other shows, in movies, we got the main girl who's like, I love the jock character. And she's got all her side friends. Like, for example, another movie that I can think of right off the bat is To All the Boys I Loved Before. We got Peter Kaminsky would be Noah Flynn, except not violent. We got Laura Jean, but she's got, she's got like 2-3 friends. Elle only has 1 friend. So does that mean that Lee is literally controlling her? Because it seems like there are other people that they kind of do hang around because the whole party, maybe the beginning of summer going into their senior year, there's lots of people there. So obviously it seems that Elle isn't unlikable, but she doesn't have any other friends. She even is on the soccer team, but she never seems to ever hang out with those friends either. So is it Lee not allowing her to have certain friends? Because also, I'd like to say another thing. Elle puts a lock on her phone after she starts dating Noah, and then Lee demands to know why she has a lock on her phone. And I don't know. Like, being demand isn't the right word, but the way that he said it, just I don't know, it gave me the ick. Like, it's none of his business if she does or doesn't have a lock on it, and he isn't entitled to know why she does or doesn't. Lee, just like Noah, is also really egocentric as well, and 2 of the main scenes that you can really see it in is, so the scene where they're in the bathroom prior to, I guess the beginning of their birthday party, and Lee turns to Elle and says, I think you did the right thing, don't you? And so Lee has forgiven Elle at this point, and Elle is obviously grieving because, she loved Noah. I have a very differing opinion about if she loved or didn't love Noah, but the whole point is the movie tells me that she loves him, so I'm just gonna go with it. He should be comforting her because she just lost a boyfriend, someone that she loves, but he's only caring about himself. And then also, another scene. So it's seen in the deleted scenes, or extras, or I'm not even sure, but when the credits roll, you see other scenes from the movie. One of them is when Lee first meets Rachel. So him and Rachel, I guess, go home or whatever. And so Lee doesn't give Elle a ride for the possibility of him being able to touch Rachel's boobs. We obviously know that in the sequel, he doesn't even treat Rachel like a human being. He obviously doesn't seem to care about Rachel nor Elle, and he only seems to care about himself. And another thing, which is horrible of him to do, also in the extra credit scenes or whatever they're called. So there's a part where Elle, she's drinking, and then she gets drunk. And so in the extra credit scenes, there's a part where Lee is showing photos that he took of Elle puking in a toilet. He's immortalizing a very embarrassing moment for Elle. And when Al obviously does not seem comfortable for the fact that he has those photos. He's just like, oh, they're hilarious, whatever, blah, blah, right? So, horrible thing to do. And so, last thing, Lee is, so he's not really physically aggressive like Noah. He's more verbally aggressive with like a tad of physical aggression. And so he's verbally aggressive. Like there's literally a part where he calls Elle a slut, and it's part of a bigger analogy about how she's a slut that Noah has picked up from the club, which I don't understand the analogy. I just understand that's wrong to say that, especially about your best friend. So that's obviously really mean to say. Just kind of a last thing overall, he's manipulative, super manipulative. This is really more you see in the second movie. But I kind of do want to break it up. So obviously, you know, there's the whole plot line of how Elle applies to UCLA and Harvard. So she gets shamed by Lee for applying to more than one school. Let me tell you, as someone who has applied to multiple schools, it is always a good idea to apply to multiple schools because, you know, you'll never know what will happen. Especially with UCLA. UCLA is a very hard school to get into, especially because it is a UC school. So, obviously Harvard is as well, but the fact that she's giving herself multiple options is also really good. So, him making Elle feel bad for the fact that she's applying to multiple schools is just horrible overall. So, to wrap up, there seems to also be a lot of other possibly satirical parts, like the fact that the OMG girls drink bananas and water. Good comment about how girls try to eat, like, not that much to, like, possibly stay skinny, and also there's a part where they all wear the same dress, and it could kind of be how like people kind of meld together when you look back at high school. And then also all the male characters, so that's the characters Lee, Noah, Tuppen, those three I've already talked about. And then there's like the character Warren. They all really suck as people because Warren, I already explained Tuppen, Lee, and Noah. But Warren is a guy who can't take no for an answer when it comes to pretty much having sex. So I'm not sure if that's supposed to show how toxic masculinity comes in multiple varieties, shapes, and sizes and whatever. But yeah. To wrap everything up though, I'm not sure if I did or didn't convince you about the fact that this movie is way worse than, you know, it actually seems like from a first glance. But I can say this. I do genuinely believe that in the third movie there will be a lot of manipulation from both Lee and Noah to try and convince them to go to their respective schools. I do 100% believe that will happen in the third movie, and I don't know, maybe they'll try and like kind of retcon with all the bad things that Lee has done to Elle, kind of showing, oh yeah, this is actually a satire or something like that. Who knows though? But like, obviously she shouldn't go to UCLA or Harvard either, because she shouldn't be going for a friend or a boyfriend, especially because we don't even know what she got in for. Did she get in for dance? Because that's the only trait I know about her. But yeah, just overall, maybe I made you think about this movie more. If or when, who knows, if you ever watch this movie again, or when you watch this movie again, maybe you'll kind of look at this a little more critically and be like, oh yeah, there are a lot more people who suck in this movie. But that is all for this video. Like, share, comment down below if I didn't convince you that this movie is way darker than you might have previously assumed. Maybe not, who knows? And subscribe if you like what I'm doing here. But until next time, peace.